Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. And with baseball in full swing and football season around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From Major League Baseball to UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Head to betonline.ag today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Hope you all had a wonderful Independence Day weekend, or fans in the United States. If you're not in the United States, just thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We appreciate it. It's quiet right now in July as we're waiting for Big Ten Media Day, and then obviously training camp starts next month. So right now we want to dive into a lot of developing stories within the world of college football and how it relates to Penn State football when it comes to NIL, when it comes to the transfer portal, when it comes to revenue sharing, because these are all developing subject matters that are going to affect Penn State football, maybe not right this second, but in the very short term. And you can see the Wild West being governed, so to speak, slowly but surely. I want to start off with some NIL valuations that are out there for Penn State football. This is according to On3. Penn State's average NIL for the 2026 class is $57,000 per On3. That is On3's measure of each commitment's NIL value. And again, that's an average. By comparison, according to On3, Notre Dame's is $104,000. Ohio State's is $150,000. USC's is $166,000. And Oregon's is a whopping $234,000. So Justin, like, I take this with a grain of salt, and it is, some things that are understood, some things that are not completely understood, but still, this is interesting to look at to see where Penn State is in this arms race. And we're also going to be living in an era very soon. You and I have talked about it ad nauseum, of the $20.5 million NIL cap for all sports for all major Division I colleges. And how much do you allot for football? Is Penn State in a good position in terms of budgeting more so than other schools? It's a bigger conversation, but let's start with those numbers at first. Do you think they're accurate? And even if they're not accurate, do you think that makes sense in terms of, like, hey, where Penn State is in that hierarchy?
Yeah, I think the numbers are, somewhat accurate in just, right? Like, I don't think they're like specifically accurate. It's like, oh, this player's getting 57. I think overall, some of the teams, how they divide their payroll up, all the freshmen get a similar salary, right? So you might say this team, they get about 50, this team gets that. I think the numbers that they're pulling or comparing, though, to like the USCs and Oregons, it's a little interesting when you dive a little deeper, because I don't know if they have as many recruits and they have a little bit of higher touted recruits, right? And I do know some of the guys that those teams have landed. There's numbers that have been floated around out there of like what they're fetching in their first year and things of that nature. Even with some of my clients that deal in the SEC, their lead-in numbers are a little bit different than the Big Ten numbers. But again, it goes into that philosophy of team building. So like all these different things, I don't think that shows that a team's behind or not. It just shows that, hey, this is the philosophy that they're rolling with. They're paying guys that are incoming freshmen versus a prove it, pay it type of model where you build team chemistry and culture, which has more of a sustainable impact, though I think, to winning, especially in a game of football. But yeah, you can have some microwavable success with obviously a disproportionate amount of talent. But yeah, so I think there's truth in there, but I think there's some gray area that can bring it a little closer to, not having a competitive advantage just based on the numbers that are out there.
Do you think Penn State is better set up to budget for that future $20.5 million cap than some of these other schools? Like if you're Oregon, you're truly throwing an average of $234,000 at 17, 18-year-old kids. Like, you're not going to hit on all of those.
No, man, because like the money comes down. Okay, like the money's the tool, but at the end of the day, it comes down to culture and coaching. Like the culture is going to determine how the talent is valued, and the coaching is going to determine how that talent is developed. And so when you put those different things together, you start to get some patterns of players that you get. You start to get patterns of records and winning percentages from coaches and how these philosophies roll out. So, I mean, we've seen the pay to big players that are unproven model all over sports before, right? And so trying to find those predictors of success, because as you recruit players earlier or acquire talent earlier in the developmental process, there's more risk with what you're getting. So again, to have sustainable success, I think there has to be a fine balance in paying the right players. And that means having the right information. That means doing the proper eval, not just who you know at the ground level, but like a 360 holistic approach of like, how does this player fit into this organization for us to have success? Because you don't have to get return on investment on that cash, because a lot of these schools that are operating, whether they have big money donors or they're still supplementing from outside sources to just try to get this chance to win that national championship and push all the chips in, which some schools are operating in right now. Good luck. You know what I mean? But we have seen that been a predictor of success from in the past, whether it's Ohio State pushed the chips in, they win. Michigan, they went back and paid all those guys that were returning to the team. They won a national championship. They ever won a national championship in between there, they were the highest paid team at that point too. But as we continue to move forward within budgets, yeah, there has to be a foundation and culture that's built to sustain and have a winning program.
And it does feel like, particularly this past 7 months and looking ahead to 2025, it does feel like Penn State is going, quote unquote, all chips to the center, especially the way that they've spent in the transfer portal, looking at the wide receiver position, looking at linebacker, a couple of other positions of need. It does feel like Penn State is doing that, at least for the season, because there is the understanding of what this roster is and the chance that Penn State has ahead of them to contend for the national championships. You understand that. And also you're kind of getting in under the wire, and that you're going to have to deal with that budgeting sooner rather than later. It feels like Penn State is set up well for that. And a lot of that, unfortunately, is based on years ago when NIL first came into existence. A lot of people within the Penn State ecosystem dragging their feet on this subject. And it's not that James Franklin and the staff or even a lot of people in the athletic department were dragging their feet. It was just kind of, the tradition and success with honor, where that could be construed as like, well, you should just want to come here and we don't need to pay you to come here. And I was like, yeah, that's change. And I think the culture element that Penn State has developed of, hey, you're not going to get rich as a freshman, but there's this chance for you to earn more and more as your time goes by and you show your commitment, and you have to fit within the team. So all the points that you just raised, I think are very, very interesting. One thing I didn't get to ask you about, because it happened within the last few weeks, I believe it was Georgia dissolved their collective, their NIL collective. And you and I have talked about collectives as a whole within college football. there are some schools that have great relationships with their collectives. I would reference Ole Miss and the Grove Collective. Really good lockstep communication, it seems like. Other schools where it's the head football coach being able to have that separation of church and state, almost of like, hey, like, I don't want to deal with this. You guys handle this. There's other schools where these collectives think they've saved their programs and think a little bit too much of themselves. There have been times where you and I have talked about Penn State's own collective, Happy Value United, and been a little bit frustrated with some of the things that feel like looking for charity and hands out and, oh, we'd like some money, please help us. And it's like, this is a blue blood program. This is a big time program. What did you think about Georgia dissolving their collective? And what do you think the future of collectives is within college football?
I mean, you can kind of grand opening, grand closing. You saw it coming down the pipe. If you understand the fundamentals of the business, yes, they can help as like a shell supporter. You know what I mean? When you talk about donors and money that's been given to the support the programs over the history of college sports. But I think really athletes need to reevaluate the relationship with the universities. My good friend Io Vapahunda on Substack wrote an article about just changing the relationships between the university and looking at them no longer as like higher education, but almost like a club team, right? And just the whole formation and all the business entities that operate there, and looking at them as like your first employer. And what do you want from that first employer? You're looking for them to help develop you and set you up to get that big paycheck. But when you're coming out of college or whatever that case may be and preparing to go, you're not looking for the biggest, like the biggest paycheck coming out of school, because you know what the market, suggests. And I think that's how these universities are going to have to operate. I think it gets a little muddied when we are promising education and development instead of just looking at, this is the business that we're bringing you here for, and this is what we're getting paid. This is what you're getting paid to do. Because I think the messaging, even within the recruiting space, is changing, right? Because it's less about coming here and develop as a whole person. That it is like, this is what we can provide for you. This is what the business is, X, Y, and Z, which I like, where cards are up front. But it also, you have to be prepared to take full advantage of what the school then provides. So like, with that being said, like that goes back into that culture. Like people like to work where they feel good working, right? You might take a little bit less money, but you may perform out of the wazoo. And the next thing you know, you're on the free market and then get more money. Or when I worked at the XFL, we dealt with a lot of players that were trying to take that $50,000 opportunity to get that $600,000 opportunity, right? And that's still what these schools have to position themselves and make sure that they're selling that rite of passage to acquire talent. And I think another thing that has shifted a little bit is not so much recruiting, but it's retaining talent. Because I think that's where we're going to see that change and shift in the culture in sports. Because in professional sports, we always say, like, you don't really get your money until that second contract, because those are the guys that have proven themselves. That is going to continue to transition down into college. And right now, Penn State is set up to be ahead in that front in terms of culture and guys coming in and earning their due and earning their money. And that sets up for successful programs.
Well, you talk about not getting rich on your first deal. That is something that soon-to-be Texas Tech offensive tackle Felix Ojo cannot say, because there's a story out there that he has signed a fully guaranteed 3-year deal worth $5.1 million in revenue sharing with Texas Tech. That was reported recently per ESPN. You and I have talked about it a lot in the sport of football, regardless of what level you're at. The three most important positions when it comes to paying are quarterback, protect the quarterback, rush the quarterback. So you understand where an offensive tackle would be getting big time money as they progress within college football. But at first blush, how do you feel about an unproven high school player getting 3 years guaranteed $5.1 million in revenue sharing? And do you think that's something Penn State would ever sign up for?
I mean, trust your eval. If my man Blanchard down there, if they believe that that's what the eval is, the GM at Texas Tech believes that's what the kid's worth, to get a premium offensive tackle locked in for 3 years at, a premium clip, I think that could be worth it. Like when you talk about like the percentages that you're going to give to different position groups, and if he's elite and you have an elite guy at Texas Tech that you can build around, I think it's very important. Just building a football league. Like I said, we paid 11 guys over the base, 8 were quarterbacks, the rest were offensive tackles. So with that being said, we didn't blink an eye when the quarterback at Michigan, you know what I mean, was getting whatever, $1 million, I think, offensive tackle, an elite offensive tackle or deemed elite offensive tackle by prospect measures, right? Or how he moves, how big, strong, fast, length, all those different type of things that matched up with the evaluation. I think that's about on par for an elite offensive lineman that's going to be protecting your most valuable asset on the field.
Is projected as a 5-star, and Penn State has 5 stars on its roster, has 5 stars potentially coming down the pike. See what happens if they ever actually bother to put on a Penn State uniform. There's that.
There's character, right? There's character and profiles that every team has to match up with. Like there's talent. Talent is universal. You can go talent everywhere. But again, when you're building your program, you have to find the talent that matches with your culture. Sometimes that overrides the amount of talent that a player has. So you don't always have to pay $5.1 million. I think that's the beauty in, you know, roster valuations and roster management when it comes down to the business of it, because there's more than one way to skin a cat. It's just, can you get everybody on the same page and aligned to follow that vision?
The one thing I like about the vision of this deal is 3 years fully guaranteed, that it's like, hey, you stay here for 3 years, as opposed to hopping in the transfer portal at the first sign of trouble, or you just don't feel good about the situation or whatever. I think that's a good place for the sport to go. And you and I have talked about it a bunch. I'm like, hey, if I was signing Drew Allard today and he's a 5-star rated quarterback, then it's like, yeah, why wouldn't I try to get him signed guaranteed for 3 years, knowing I've got him locked up for 3 years and he's not going to hop into the portal? I think that makes a ton of sense. And that's a good place where the sport is going.
Trust the eval, man. It's really interesting, I think, as people continue to dive deeper into, you know, the sports asset and sports asset management or athlete asset management, as you see private equity coming into college sports, you're going to start to see that there's a history or a track record, a history to be able to evaluate high school prospects before they become college prospects longer than NFL guys actually invest in the recruiting or the background of college players. I say they go about 18 to 24 months. And a lot of times when you're recruiting a guy, you can get information over 3 to 4 years, right? A lot of times you learn about them when they're 12, 13 years old, and you kind of track them the whole way. So even when you're building out leverage plans and seeing how much assets are worth, I think there might be an opportunity to get even more accurate data on these high school players if schools and athletic departments start operating and evaluating things the right way. And we do that at LIG Sports Group. Shameless plug.
You do legitimately deal with a lot of
yeah,
through LIG Sports Group. And, you know, this deal I thought was very interesting in its reporting is that it's a fully guaranteed 3-year, $5.1 million revenue share deal. So you're seeing the language shift from, you know, we were talking about NIL valuations before, and it's shifting from an NIL deal to a revenue share deal. And a story that popped up recently, I thought that was very interesting because it would really piss off Penn State fans if Penn State went this way. LSU allegedly is toying with having advertiser patches on the football jerseys. That's something, for instance, the NBA has done, and that got a lot of flack at first, and now it's very much the norm. You see it in the WNBA, but it's not something you've seen on NFL game uniforms. You have seen them on NFL practice uniforms.
It's big practice uniforms. It's
big
huge
on practice uniforms. So it's but it's completely different when you're using it in a game. There's a lot of layers to this. One, what's your reaction to that from someone who is dealing with player counseling, management, all that sort of stuff? And it's like, hey, you know, the school my player's potentially going to is talking about putting, you know, a Pepsi patch on their logo, on their jersey or whatever it is, and it's a revenue sharing deal. Are you just smiling ear to ear like this is new?
Well, 100%, but then it also gives you a little bit of how that school is approaching the new era, right? Where are they getting money from? Do they have to go the corporate sponsor route, or do they have, you know, internal donors that want to take over that? Whatever that looks like. I think there is some validity to, like, oh, school has Pepsi and is putting Pepsi on their jersey. Now, if you have a valuable asset that can get a Pepsi deal, I think there's value in that. Again, we're talking about that top 1%. Of players, but I think it's a great revenue stream for schools to dabble in with companies that align with their brand identity. You know what I mean? At a whole, because it's interesting, as we were speaking, that the NFL is big on practice jerseys. That shows how much coverage practice gets, right? In the NFL and how many eyes are on there. Because I mean, I think I was in the NFL when they changed the rule to where owners could put patches on your practice jersey, because when training camp became a spectacle and players and everybody's coming there, and the joint practices was always a big thing too. But no, I think it's a pretty cool opportunity, but everyone's looking for ways to drive revenue, different ways to sell this product, and just making sure that you're as valuable as possible so that you have leverage to make these demands. So like, hey, if you get to a school that has Pepsi, well, and you want to get a piece of that you're worthy of it. Because I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of entities have big brand deals, but you're not worth it as an individual. You're worth it to the collective. For example, another exciting deal was Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State signing with Adidas, a Nike school. That only happens because he's Jeremiah Smith, like big dog status, right? As a receiver. So like, yeah, that's a cool opportunity, but that's a cool opportunity for the top 1%. So let's try to craft leverage to get to that, to be able to take advantage of those opportunities to craft leverage, because there's different leverage points at each level. And it's just, I think we kind of miss them because we don't have awareness of where we are in the business, and everybody's kind of chasing, the headlines.
Do you think you'll see a day when Penn State puts advertiser logos on their jerseys? They're like game jerseys, because I think Penn State fans would be furious if that happened.
Yeah, you're going to see the home. What's the home company?
Shore Home. Oh,
Shore
yeah.
Home. You're going to see.
Oh God.
You're going to see Shore Homes on there, man.
You're going to see.
I would expect
Utz.
Huh?
Utz.
I think people will be pissed off, but I would expect it to happen. And if not, you guys better, pay all the different fees that they're going to push onto the tickets and the new upgraded stadium, and buy some suites so that they don't put the stuff on the jerseys.
Yeah, I think it's why so many college football fans are struggling with the sport when we are in the off season, because there is so much talk about the business of this stuff. And admittedly, you and I are like, hey, we're in July, like, recruiting, it's quiet right now. We're like,
this is a college fan. A lot of the college fans, they feel like they've been lied to, like the old blue blood college fan of like what they were told that they were watching. We're watching the development of young men, or people just compete for no money and just give it their all for the love of the game. Like that was what's been sold for the past 100 years. And now all of a sudden it's like, hey, it's not that anymore. Even though it hasn't been that for the past 25 years, just with a different veil over our face. But now it's just making that change, because I think there's a completely different profile of college fan and professional fan. Like it's a different person. So like, you know what I mean? In terms of why people want to watch college sport versus a professional sport. And now we're turning that college fan, we're transforming them into a professional fan. And so the athletes need to be ready to be treated like professionals.
Lastly, I want to hit on a development from the transfer portal. There is a new one-time transfer portal window. The NCAA Committee on Legislative Relief has issued a waiver to permit athletes whose schools place on, quote, the designated student athlete list to enter the portal from July 7th to August 5th. So that is underway as we speak. DSAs, designated student athletes, are grandfathered in athletes exempt from roster limits. So this is only for athletes who would have lost their roster spot, and if players are placed on this designated student athlete list by school. So now, if I have it correct, Justin, we presently have 3 transfer portal windows, and it's like, could we just get this down to 1? I think that's what every coach in America is asking for. This, at least, like, I can wrap my head around, and there's a good reason for it. I don't know what your experience has been with this new window, obviously dealing with it with LIG Sports Group, but this seems like a good opportunity for kids ultimately to just find the right home.
Yeah, I mean, you want to, this whole space has been tricky. Like the rules changed, coaching changes. So yeah, I think this one makes a little sense. And when they get down to 1 transfer portal window, that'll be a win for everybody.
Do you think you see Penn State make any other moves in the transfer portal, considering how late we are? It's about a month now until training camp.
I don't believe so. Again, a team that I believe is high on character and culture from a team standpoint, I don't see them adding anybody in July.
Yeah. I'd be surprised too. Let us know what you guys think. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack here in terms of NIL, revenue sharing, jersey patches for advertisers. Would you like to see more of that? Oh my God, if we ever got to a point where there were logos on the field at Beaver Stadium, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people who react negatively if that does happen. It could be a matter of when, who knows. But let us know in the comments section how you guys feel about all of this, and especially how you're feeling about the team as we sit right now here in early July, about a month until training camp gets underway. I am dying for that and dying for this football season to kick off against Nevada in late August. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.